There are a lot of side effects people experience when they remove carbohydrates or reduce them greatly in their diet. And one of them is depression. It's pretty well documented. If Let me know in the comments actually if you yourself, when you went and reduced your carbohydrate intake on your diet, when you got below a certain threshold, did you start experiencing depression, if only temporarily? I've made videos in the past about how carbohydrates tend to make me mean because on the flip side of that, I guess, is the sudden infusion of sugar into the diet can also have that kind of sort of the opposite effect. Not euphoria, but can also trigger any kind of anxiety and other things that really destroy your mood. But now we have a study, at least one study, that has gotten some mainstream media attention that actually sort of helps us understand possibly the link between not just depression and removal of carbohydrates in our diet, but also why you might still be having some lingering problems a with depression in your diet if you are doing everything you're supposed to be doing, at least for yourself. You're doing like essentially like a relaxed ketogenic diet, or maybe you're doing a very dirty carnivore diet. You just can't quit your diet Dr. Pepper. I see that a lot in groups. Or yes, you drink your black coffee, but once in a while you like to put in the sugar-free chemical concoction into it that makes it taste like, I guess this time of year, pumpkin spice. There are people who do that, and while they think they still get it, doesn't undermine their health outcomes on their diet. One thing that you might be experiencing is depression, and there's a study now that links the consumption of ultra-processed foods to higher rates of depression. And this study was published in Forbes magazine, a very mainstream and fairly measured when it comes to certain kinds of scientific issues. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We won't be doing too extensive of a reading. We're just going to read their quoting of the study and its findings. So the headline from Forbes is ultra processed food, especially artificial sweeteners, linked to depression, study finds. You're not going to find artificial sweeteners in things that are not ultra processed. I mean, there are, some ketogenic candies out there, peanut butter cup kind of things that have like made with 5 ingredients and their sweetener is usually monk fruit extract. I wouldn't call that an artificial sweetener. I would just call that a refined sugar alternative. Monk fruit extract is not in the same ballpark or category as aspartame or any of the other myriad artificial sweeteners you see in things like soft drinks and coffee creamers and whatever else you want to think about them with. Let's take a look here at the actual nuts and bolts of the study as reported by Forbes. So, quote, the study, which involved nearly 32,000 middle-aged women, assessed the diet of participants through questionnaires every 4 years from 2003 to 2017, and split them into 5 groups according to the amount of ultra-processed food they consumed. While most food is processed to some degree or another, ultra-processed foods like packaged snacks and frozen meals typically contain ingredients that rarely feature in home cooking, such as protein isolates, hydrogenated oils, high fructose corn syrup, and chemical additives. They are already linked to a host of health conditions like obesity, cancer, and diabetes. Using 2 different definitions of depression, a strict version based on the report of a clinical diagnosis, and regular antidepressant use, and a broader category requiring either a clinical diagnosis or antidepressant use, the researchers assessed whether there was a link between the diet and the risk of developing depression, taking into account known or suspected risk factors for depression, like physical activity, alcohol and tobacco use, other health issues, and age. There were 2,122 cases of depression under the strict definition. In the top fifth of consumers, 9 or more servings of ultra-processed food a day had around a 50% higher risk of depression compared with women who are the lowest amount of 4 servings or fewer a day, the researchers found. It was around a third higher for the broader category. When considering different kinds of ultra-processed foods, the researchers found a particular link between artificial sweeteners and artificially sweetened drinks and depression, with the top fifth of consumers having a 26% and 37% higher risk of depression compared to the bottom fifth, respectively. Andrew Chan, a professor at Harvard Medical School and one of the study's authors, told Forbes the findings suggest people, particularly those struggling with mental health, may wish to limit their intake of ultra-processed foods whenever possible. End quote. I would actually suggest you take that to heart also. If you have a personal history of depression or anxiety or things, I would actually recommend a stricter version of the diets we tend to advocate in this space. It would probably behoove you to just bear in mind the mind body connection that really happens, that it really does exist. Your dietary changes will impact your mental health. That shouldn't be a controversial statement, but a lot of people tend to forget about that. That the way you eat can and absolutely will impact your quality of life, especially on a mental health level. The prevalence of artificial sweeteners in some of the biggest crutches we see in our community can't be ignored either. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. When you go into a social media group in our spaces and you start talking about how, well, I don't need to be super strict, so I'll, drink my Diet Dr. Pepper or I'll put my artificial sweetener in my coffee. You get a lot of pushback. It's a point of big controversy in our community. And I suppose if you don't have increased anxiety, increased depression, or whatnot, and beyond just the sugar withdrawals, because that happens, if you don't have that, I suppose you can continue to ignore the advice if you so wish. But if you are, you've been doing keto or carnivore or whatever for some time now, and you still have depression or anxiety or things, take a look at the diet soft drinks that you're drinking. Take a look at those artificial things you're putting in your coffee. Take a look at those keto frozen meals you might be eating. Those Quest pizzas with 60 grams of fiber in them. They probably also have some things to make that pasta sauce that they call a pizza sauce taste better. Take a look at all those factors. You might find that you're consuming a lot of aspartame or a lot of other artificial sweeteners. I know it's not great news. Some people say they have to have their coffee and they can't drink it black. It took me 2 years to train myself to drink coffee black. And ironically, what finally pushed it for me was doing a carnivore diet. After a while, my taste buds adjusted themselves to not having sweet things at all. And then I started noticing, like, I could even taste, once I stopped using artificial sweeteners, I noticed I could even taste the trace sugars in commercial bacon. Some bacon started tasting sweet, others didn't. And the ones that didn't taste as sweet were the ones that didn't have sugar as high on the ingredients list. There are a lot of benefits to removing artificial sweeteners from your diet, and it's good to know that the scientific community has at least done some research and provided us at least some evidence that the ultra processed foods that are out there, even ones that might be beneficial to you on balance, at least early stages of a diet, may actually not be worth it in the long run. And that if you're having these outcomes, we now have some evidence that there are these negative outcomes associated with it. So do you have this problem? Do you get depression, anxiety? You're months into your carbohydrate elimination protocol and you're still having this, not that temporary step where around second week or third week suddenly you're irritable, maybe suddenly your sense of smell is stronger and you notice, when your neighbor's got a Twinkie or whatever. Not that stage. That passes. I'm talking you're months in. You shouldn't be having cravings anymore, but you're still depressed. Are you having that issue? Obviously, you should take and seek professional help with these kinds of things if you have them, if they persist. But one thing that might eliminate the problem, go stricter. I haven't given that advice in a long time, but sometimes stricter is better, even if we don't want to admit it to ourselves. Let me know, though, what do you think of this study? What do you think of this? Are you surprised that ultra-processed foods cause depression? I'm not. It goes a long way to explaining actually the state of society, the amount of the stuff that people consume, the effects we're seeing in individual people, and then you just aggregate that to what the effect on society is going to be, and it goes a long way to explain things going on. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help, so to share this on social media. That helps too. I'm Anthony Stine, the Practical Carnivore. Thanks for your time today.